Nicola Morgan, one of our keynotes here at GESSTalks. You've done a keynote for us and also quite a few workshops. Do you want me to talk me through some of those and what audiences could expected from that?
Yeah, so the overall theme for me has been the learning brains in your classroom. And obviously with the theme of empathy of the whole conference, that has been very apt because my belief and my understanding is that when teachers, and parents actually, but when teachers properly understand what's going on in the minds and brains of the young people they're trying to teach, so the learning brains in their classroom, and properly understand, so have proper cognitive empathy about the various things that are going on in the brains in their classroom that may affect negatively or positively, but often negatively, their learning, then that empowers the teacher to have their young people's brains in their hands and have their learning in their hands. So in my keynote, it was really difficult because in such a short space of time, and I've written loads of books about this and more typically do a whole day training on it, I had to pick out what I felt were the absolute essences of what people need to understand. And one of those, I think, is how the teenage brain is in some ways different from ours. One of those most important ways is that teenagers will find it more difficult than a typical adult, to direct their attention to the task when they've got lots of other things going on in their mind. And then to understand what those other things might be. So to understand that a worry, for example, takes up a lot of brain space, a lot of attention, brain bandwidth. And so if you've got a big worry going on in your mind, and we know this as adults as well, if you've got something big on your mind, it's harder to do your job properly. You're more likely to make mistakes. You're more likely to forget things. You're more likely to be snappy and not be able to regulate your behavior. If that's the case for us as adults, it's even more the case for young people, because the part of the brain that you use in order to do that regulation and direct attention to the task is the prefrontal cortex, which is the last part of the brain to develop and is not developed in typical teenagers. So once teachers start to understand that there are these stresses going on, occupying bandwidth, what the stresses might be for teenagers. And you might think it's obvious and you would know, but actually once you start to look into it, there are a lot more things going on in a teenager's brain. Once you know that, then you can start to do things, firstly to moderate and maybe change how you teach, but secondly, and maybe more importantly, to show young people how they can actually have better stress control and better well-being and be able to manage their own learning and their own minds. And I call that allowing them to become active agents in their own learning and lives and well-being.
That's really interesting, because I think one of the key themes at the show has been around empathy, and obviously that's quite key in the classroom to positively influence your students and empower them.
Yes, absolutely. And by chance, one of the sub-themes that you have is flourish. And flourish is a model that I use. For me, flourish stands for food, liquid, oxygen, use, relaxation, interest, sleep, and happiness. And it's the basis of one of my most recent books, Positively Teenage. So it's the idea that there are practical things that young people can do, the parents can do, and their teachers can do. Practical, often really quite simple things that don't require extra time in the curriculum. I'm not talking about adding something into the curriculum or making lessons longer or anything. Far from it. It's simple lifestyle, everyday, momentary things that you can do to help your students learn better, feel better, perform better.
And what would you hope would be one of the key things that an audience from one of your talks would take away and be able to put in place in the classroom?
That is really hard because I have so much on my website. I have advice and strategies and solutions on a whole range of topics, and including one that I haven't mentioned yet, although I did in one of my workshops, and that is the effects of online and screens. So I think if I were to pick one thing, it would be to realize that our brains can be in our hands once we know how they work. And that applies for adults, so teachers or parents, knowing how their own brains work and therefore how their students work, but also for the students themselves. So the idea that you can be more in control than you might think of your everything, your brain, your life, your well-being, your performance, and to take the things that you can control and focus on them, and to try to ignore the things that you can't control. And there are plenty of things that teachers can control and help their students control.
So you're also in town in Dubai for the Emirates Lit Fest, and you've got a talk on Saturday, the 9th of March.
Yes, so yesterday I was talking very, very briefly about the effects of screens and smartphones and social media, but fortunately, as you say, I'm back next week. So on Saturday, I'm doing a talk for families. So teenagers, bring your parents along because parents need to know this stuff possibly even more than teenagers. And my message on screens and smartphones and social media is absolutely equally for adults as it is for teenagers. So I'll be talking about some of the positives, but also focusing on what we really know. So ignoring the newspaper headlines, which keep telling us all sorts of super negative things about screens, I'll be unpicking that and working out and sharing what we really need to know so that we can all, whatever age we are, live better with our screens and let them be our tools and not our tyrants.
And what's been your favourite thing about Guest Dubai so far?
Meeting always, when I go to countries outside the UK, it's always meeting people from other countries and seeing again, every time it happens, seeing how much we share, how much more there is the same between us than there is that divides us, and seeing human beings being human beings in the way that we all are. With all our differences, we're also all mostly the same, and the way our brains and our stress levels and our well-being and all of that works is just the same. And so it's just seeing that reinforced and meeting people from all around the world, particularly here, has been the best thing.